Hey, welcome collectors of all ages. This is Mike with Jayhawker Vintage Cards, and I'm recording the video in a different place. I think I've recorded one video up here. It's daytime, and so I'm in a little room. It's not really a card room. It's just a place where I'm trying to get my stuff organized. I'm hanging out with Nolan and Bob Feller back there, a couple autographed photos staring at me. And, well, I really didn't want to make this video. This is not my type of video to make, but raise your hand. One hand, two hands, foam in the sky, say hallelujah, give me a heck yeah or a hell yeah if you, like me, and I know a lot of people, are suffering from grading fatigue. It's everywhere. Every channel, every content creator, every collaboration video, everybody's talking about grading. And I know from the guys that I talk to a lot, when we get online and do some chats that aren't recorded, we almost to a man are like, it's enough. It's enough. It's the same people, the same content creators on the same channels, talking about the same thing over and over again. They collaborate on videos and they talk about the same thing. We already know, because we've seen it 100 times. We already know what they're going to say. So when you see the videos where a guest person's going to come on and talk about grading, we already know what they're going to say. We already know what their opinion is. But here's the issue that I have that doesn't get talked about enough. In fact, I don't think it really gets talked about at all. And that is, grading is not the issue. That's just the means of getting to what the real issue is. And the real issue is value. Specifically, future value. That's what this is all about. That's what all the discussion on the grading is about. Is how does what's going on with grading affect the future value of our collections? Now, that could be grading future value when you want to sell the cards in a week. If you're trying to maybe consolidate some cards to move up and get a bigger card, are you going to get the same amount for your money? It could be the set registry, and boy, are you going to be able to compete? You know, you have these $800,000 cards, and now maybe because of stricter grading standards, nobody wants to pay for that one, so maybe now it's only worth $500,000 cards, and you know, the majority of us, we don't relate to that. That's not the lane that we collect in. Honestly, most of us don't care. Just like all the discussion with the Kevin O'Leary purchase of the Bryant and Jordan card. It's been discussed ad nauseum. What's it going to affect for the rest of us? Nada. Now, maybe for the super high-end guys, the big-time investors, maybe, I don't know. That's such a small segment. Why are you even talking about it? The most of us out here, it doesn't matter. We don't care. It doesn't affect us and never will affect us. But the question I have, and again, this is not related to grading. It has to do with value, because that's what this is all about. Forget all the grading talk. It's really about the future value. So I have two questions for you, and I would love to hear your feedback, whether you make your own video, whether you respond to me via email, whether you make comments below. And the questions are this. One is the focus on future value hurting the hobby. Second question is can you be a vintage collector? And this is only about vintage. So I'm not talking about ultra modern. I'm not talking about flipping. I'm not talking about speculating. I'm talking about vintage cards. So the second question is, can you be a vintage collector without worrying about the future value of your cards, future value of your collections? Now, there are people with very strong opinions out there either way. Now, a lot of the guys that make the content, a lot of the big channels will absolutely tell you, yes, you have to consider future value. You're an idiot if you don't. You're in denial if you don't. And last night, one of the biggest players in the game said that if somebody says that they're not into the future value of their collection, they're liars. And that struck a nerve to me and some other guys that were watching this and making comments, because he hopped on a little bit later. He's a great guy, so I'm not going to knock anybody, because I know from talking to other people who do know him and from seeing what he's done and for the community, he's a very generous guy. But he's playing at a level of collecting that 99% of us who collect vintage cards don't. So his perspective is different. So, you know, he'll buy cards that are worth more than I make in 2 or 3 years salary combined easily. I mean, I don't relate to that. And that's great that he can do that. I'm not jealous of that. I'm not knocking him. But I think we're getting to the point where there's so much stress and so much emphasis on value, 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 and profit, 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 that we're forgetting what this is. This is a freaking hobby. A hobby. And it's a hobby to the most enormous segment of this society. Yes, there's investors, and that's fine. Yes, there's guys who do care about the future value of their cars. But I'm here to tell you that yes, you can be a vintage collector and not care about the future value of your cards. And I say that because I am one of those. And I actually made that comment earlier on the chat last night before this individual joined in. And I brought that up because those guys, all big time players in the community, they were talking about future value, and how important that is, and it's screwing up the set registry, and all those guys with those great collections. Now it could knock them down, because we all know the grading standards have changed. We all know that cars that were given an 8 or 7, 15, 20 years ago, you send them in now, they're going to be lucky if you get the same grade, but more than likely you're going to lose, a grade or 2 or 3. And they were talking about a great video. You should watch it. Can't think of the name of it, where a guy sent off like 40 cards, broke the PSA slabs, sent them off for grading, and they all came back either the same, or I think all of them actually came back lower, and some of them significantly lower. So yeah, I can see if you're tied into that aspect of the hobby. Really, that's not even an aspect of the hobby, that's investment. But I can see where future values is important to you. But for guys like me, which I think are probably a majority of the collectors out there, I could be wrong, I don't think that we factor in future value as much as some people do. Now, I have guys that are my friends that I've developed in the hobby that collect a lot like me, kind of have the same budget levels that I have, which is pretty low. And they do factor in future value. They are concerned about the future value of their collection. And when I tell them that I'm not, it's really hard for them to believe that. But there's reasons why. For me, this is a hobby. When I started collecting as a 10-year-old in 1982, this was a hobby. When I even sold cards as a dealer later on, it was still a hobby. It was just a fun way to make money. But I wasn't focused and obsessed with how much am I going to get from my cards. I kind of got out of hardcore collecting, but I never totally stopped. But I never thought about, hey, I'm going to buy cards that I hope someday are going to be, fund my kids through college or whatever. I mean, I never talked about it. I've never used this as an investment. This has always been a hobby, whether I buy a $5 card or whether I buy a $1,000 card. Whether I am buying cards of guys who everybody knows, like a Mickey Mantle or a Bob Gibson, or guys that I just like to collect, like Beta Pinson. It's all about the fun for me. And you know what? I'm happy about that, because I don't get stressed out. I don't get stressed out about grades, and I don't get stressed out about what's going on with SGC and PSA and collectors, and I don't stress out about that. I like to watch, and it's almost like a game. It's almost like entertainment to me, because I don't really have that much of a vested interest. Now, if you do, that's fine. And I don't have a problem with that. Where I have a problem is when people can't respect how you or me collect, and that our opinions are different. That could be an issue, because it makes this hobby filled with drama. And I'm not in for this for any type of drama, and most of you aren't either. So yes, you can be a collector and not care about future value. I've recently picked up a really nice 1951 Wheaties Premium Stan Musial. I've done a couple videos about that and all the drama behind the eBay authentication stuff. It's a beautiful piece. And for me, that's a big ticket item, a big budget item. But I never bought that going, man, I hope in 10 years I quadruple the price. I don't. I got it because, like a lot of you out there, I'm suspecting, you get cards because you want those cards in your collection. First and foremost, that's why. But if you invest in cards hoping to get some capital appreciation over time, That's fine too. But don't say that those of us who don't put that emphasis on it, that we're in denial. Don't say that if we tell you, I don't really care about the future value of my collection, don't say we're lying. Because you do you, we'll do me. I get just as much fun kind of collecting like John Mangini does, where he has an amazing collection, but he likes to get what I call smalls, lower budget items, cards with players with really cool stories behind them, right? Dr. Beckett, he's got a collection that's probably as good as anybody in the country or close to it. He likes to go to card shows and go through dollar boxes. There's the stress level goes down. And, the guys who you see who make content who seem to be the ones stressed out a lot are the ones talking about grading, which really what they're talking about is the future value of their collection, of their cards. Those are the guys who get all worked up. Those are the guys who seem stressed out. You know who's not? You know who are the guys who just always come on and have a smile on their face and they're just having a good time? Guys who collect for the fun of it. The guys who treat this as a hobby, whether that's Dylan Double D, whether that's John Mangini, who are big time guys, or us little guys like me. And a lot of you out there, I think, feel the same way. So I just want to throw out there to you guys, let us all collect the way we want. We don't need to name call. We don't need to disrespect the way other people collect. But yes, you can. If you're one of those people who are like, can I even do this? Is it even worth getting into this hobby? Is it even worth going out and spending $50 on a card or $200 on a card? Should I be worried about what I'm going to get out of that card in the future? What about my family? A lot of the arguments against people who view things like I do is like, well, you got to care about the future value of your cards because you're going to pass them on to your wife or your children. That was brought up last night and live stream, and some guys said, hey, I don't have a family. No, I do. I have a wife and 2 kids. I won't get into the situation with my kids, but they have no interest in my cards. So whatever I don't sell in my lifetime will be passed off to my wife, who I'm actually teaching about the hobby. And I'm making enough friends out there. I hope that I will introduce my wife to these people that I collect with, and if something should happen to me, and I've had some health issues, so this is a legitimate concern for me. I've had some really significant health issues over the last decade. I hope my wife will be able to reach out to those of you who I'm going to ask to be kind of the person to go to for my wife to help her liquidate my cards. And we should all have that. We should all find a couple people that we can do that with. That's the only really tip I would give you that I hope you follow. But I don't put any of my family money into my hobby. In fact, I've been married to my wife for 12 years. Now, I was married before that, and that person I have my children with. But most of the best cards in my collection, I've had in my collection that predated my wife, my marriage. Everything that she is going to get from me is going to be a bonus, is going to be free money, okay? Now, do I want her to get the most that she can out of the cards? Yeah, but I'm not going to build my collection, and I'm not going to collect in a way that I'm thinking about maximizing profit to pass on to my wife, because she doesn't have any interest. She's not in this for the fun. She's not in it to the hobby. She's just going to have a nice collection of cards for somebody of my means that she'll be able to liquidate and get some free money. And she'll be getting that money knowing that those cards, that collection, made me happy. That's what she'll care about. She won't care about that, man, I bought a 4, but I didn't get the money for a 4. Or I bought a card that was worth $1,000 in 2015, and now, because of grading issues, it may only be worth $500. That won't register with her. She won't care. And I'm not being an ass because I don't worry about that. I am doing this for fun. I'm doing this for fun. It's not that difficult to respect how those of us who treat this as a hobby, just let us do it. You don't have to look down upon us. There's a big time collector, Tony Southern Collector. If you've watched my channel, I know you know who Tony is. he can buy cards that, well, to be honest, I don't make that much money in 2 or 3 years salary. And that's great. But he remains humble. He doesn't like to get into the drama. And I applaud him for that. He is not talking about value all the time. Now, he probably cares more about future value than I do. But it's not something that he obsesses with and posts video after video. You know, Mangini he talks a lot about grading and all the issues, but he does it more, I think, from more of an educational, to try to tell us, like, hello, anybody home? Why are we obsessed with grading? Why are we obsessed with, future value? We have guys out there grading our cards that we are spending our hard-earned money, whether we're buying a $50 card that we send off for grading or a $10,000 or $20,000 card that we send off for grading. We are putting a trust in companies that don't care crap about us, with graders who may have very generic training, but we know, we've seen the videos, we know who these people are that are grading. They're younger guys, they don't have a history of and knowledge of the game for the most part. I don't want to overgeneralize, right? But we're putting so much emphasis on grading and future value, and then when something goes wrong, some of us are like freaking out. Oh my God, what are we going to do? I'll tell you what I do. I don't give a damn. I send off cards for grading. I do my pre-grade, and when it comes back, most of them are spot on because I take the time and effort to pre-grade my cards correctly. I don't look at my cards as being so much better than what I think they should be. I am very practical that way. I'm a realist that way. But you see some of those grading reveal videos where guys get the cards back and they're crapping their pants because they thought it was going to be 7 and it comes back a 4, and they're like, oh, I didn't see that. You should have seen it before you sent it off. It's not that difficult. But let's not worry about future values. And this hobby is so much becoming a business. Even on YouTube, we have different channels now combining and merging. And I think it's cool. I love seeing content. I probably watch as much content as anybody out there. Because I enjoy it. This is my hobby. I love doing this. Whether it's people I agree with or I disagree with, I love watching the content. But what we're getting a very narrow opinion on a lot of these big collaboration channels. A lot of these channels have guys who are so far beyond 90% of us collectors in terms of our means, in terms of what we or how we collect, or the ability to get the cards that we want, that our perspective is often lost. And I think Greg, Midlife Cards, last night, he was on that same collaboration. I think he did an admirable job of kind of reeling in some of those guys who immediately were off to you in the investment side and immediately off to the big business side to say, hey, you didn't say it like this, but it came across that way to me, so I appreciate that, Greg. But he's like, hey, not everybody's like that. Not everybody is into it that way. And a lot of the people in the chat were saying the same thing. They don't care about the future value. They're not all wrapped up into the grading. But hopefully, the point of this was those questions. Is that focus on future value? Is it ruining this hobby, the vintage community, the vintage hobby? Is it ruining it? I'd like to know what your opinion is on that. And I would like to know if you, like me, don't put emphasis on future value, or if you think, no, you really should, for whatever reasons. You really should put an emphasis on the future value of your collection. Now, some people, and I've seen this, not in the chat last night, but I've seen this on other comments on videos, they talk about the crash. There's a crash coming. So that's why you should be concerned. I have, in fact, sitting right over there, I have stacks of price guides going back to 1980. The big, thick price guides and the monthlies. And I can tell you, there's never been a crash like some of these guys think there's going to be, where the value of cards is going to tank down to nothing. Now, again, I don't stress about that. I don't worry about that because I have 50 years of proof that says it's not going to happen, right? Now, does that mean that some cards don't go up? No. I mean, Rod Carew and Steve Garvey cards were very popular when I first got into collecting in the early 80s. Now you hardly hear anybody talk about Rod Carew, even less talk about Steve Garvey. You don't see a lot of people showing their cards or investing in them. But collectors still collect them. And that's kind of the point, is you can be in the vintage community and just be a hobbyist. You don't have to be an investor. You don't have to be a speculator. You don't have to care about the future value of your cards or your collection. But I want to know what your opinions are, because I like the conversation. I don't like to shut people down, say that they're lying, saying that they're in denial if they collect a different way from me. I may not like certain things. I'm not into flipping. I'm not into ultra modern. I have ultra modern cards. In fact, I just bought some at a show yesterday. But they were vintage players. So anyway, that's my soapbox. I'd like to know in the comments what you think. Again, those two questions are, is the focus on the future value of cards camouflaged as grading? Is it hurting the vintage hobby? The second question is can you even be a vintage collector without worrying about the future value of your cards and your collection? Till next time, remember this is a hobby and keep enjoying collecting.